Hello, my name is Tony.
And I'm Kimberly.
And we are Better
Together.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about how difficult it can be to express personal needs and address issues that need to be addressed.
Keyword effectively.
Effectively. You don't want it to turn ugly, but sometimes there are issues that just have to be addressed, and it does not get better with time. And sometimes there are needs that I may have, and I may need to express them to her in an effective way, and she may need to do the same to me.
And I would say with our culture currently, the busyness of life, we can allow those issues and stuff to never get talked about.
And they can pile up.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that.
So an issue can overlap into another issue. And you know, when you're trying to deal with a topic, or you're trying to have a normal conversation, and there's underlying currents and things that are messing with you, it can really lead to a lack of clarity. So let's talk about
from bad to worse.
It can. So let's talk about the importance of clarity and honesty when it comes to addressing issues and needs.
So clarity, I would think that it would be think before you speak.
That's right.
Decide what issue you want to talk about. What is the issue? And be honest and clear about it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that we don't do that. We have a feeling, and we begin to try to express the feeling or the emotion as opposed to addressing the issue.
And I would say that has been my experience. I am a very emotional person, and I think sometimes my emotion can trump my honesty and clarity.
So somebody says, well, you know what? I don't want to be honest with them. I don't want to address this issue because I don't want to hurt their feelings. What would you say to somebody who took that stance?
I would say that you would do that person a disservice by not. In order to have a relationship, you have to have communication.
Yeah, because there will be secondary, and there'll be other issues that come up as a result of not having, that resolve. I'm going to make a statement now that I believe is absolutely true, and this is the reason that we're doing this series. I firmly believe that relationship rises and falls on effective communication. In other words, if there's not good communication, there is very seldom going to be good relationship. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, because it has been my experience that, we got married to have communication and to be talking. And if there's no talking, you're kind of just coexisting, and you don't seem to be better together if you do that.
Definitely. I had asked you a while back about the idea of how connected that we feel, or how connected you feel to me, and how that correlates with the effectiveness of communication, how effective communication helps you feel more connected to me.
And I wouldn't have realized that at first, when we were first married, how important communication. Well, it's not really the importance of the communication for me. It was the feeling behind the lack of communication that was building up that I wasn't recognizing early on. And so that's when I realized effective communication is really necessary and needful for me.
Yeah, I think, and this is why I really try to tell guys all the time, try to fight off that initial urge to cut off communication, because you're effectively cutting off relationship when you do that. When you cut off communication, you're kind of turning off the air hose of relationship when it comes to your wife. Please don't do that again. And we've talked about it a lot on this show. That is the natural impulse. Well, what about?
Well, and I was going to say, with what you were saying, then that leads to vulnerability and, trust and all of that.
So
fear,
fear of being vulnerable.
Right.
And ladies, I'll say this, and Kim, you can elaborate. Very often there is a very real hesitance and reticence for me, and I think guys sometimes in general, to become vulnerable because of the fear of it being weaponized.
And I would say I didn't realize the potential of that when it was happening, because I tend to be the kind of person to share my feelings regardless of how you're going to interpret what I'm saying. And I didn't recognize that when you were finally allowing yourself the opportunity to share what's in your heart and what's going on in your life, that you were being vulnerable, and I would be dismissive or I would be dismissive and I wouldn't listen, or I would attack, that I was actually cutting and shutting you down. And that's not what I would want to do.
Yeah.
Because I love you.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want to, and quite frankly, ladies generally may not be practiced at that because of how seldom guys do become vulnerable. But I've heard over and over and over, guy after guy say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I tried this and it didn't go well. And so the importance of overcoming that fear of being vulnerable, incredibly important. So I would say to you guys, listen, if you've been vulnerable and they've weaponized it, that's not your fault. That's not your problem. That's theirs. That's something that you can help them kind of work through.
And I was going to say, I would really beseech the men to continue that. But more importantly, ladies, I would really ask that you consider when they're doing that to be silent. It is so hard. It is so hard. It's hard for me as a woman to be silent when they are trying to be vulnerable. But it is so necessary and needful if you're going to want to have if you're going to want to continue to have good communication. And the one and done scenario, I feel like men have that tendency, one and done. So as they continue to open up and be vulnerable, you have to recognize that and not squelch it and not attack them and not belittle them, which is what I've done.
You know, I think it's important when we're addressing hard issues, and we do. Sometimes there are issues in a relationship that absolutely have to be addressed, and so we get that. But when we do that, we need to consider and ask why we're bringing these issues up. Are they valid reasons? Are these legitimate issues that need to be brought up and need to be dealt with, or are these, personal things that I need to work through? In other words, is it just about me and my selfish needs and making me happy? Because I'll just be honest, I can make things about me just like that. I can make big issues over not big issues very easily, very quickly.
So that's what I have that tendency. To either over communicate and then I've hurt people's feelings, or I've under communicated and I have not been expressive and helpful. I think both extremes are detrimental.
Right.
It's trying to find that balance.
So when it comes to techniques for effectively communicating our needs or effectively dealing with an issue, what are some techniques that we can incorporate?
I would say to actually study the person, to be quiet, and to be an intentional listener.
Right. And if you're the one who is being spoken to and being addressed, understand that their need doesn't necessarily mean your deficiency. And I think what happens is we fall into that trap.
That was huge. That was a revelation, actually, that you shared with me when you told me, hey, I'm sharing this with you, and I'm not sharing this because I'm trying to hurt you. It's because I'm trying to express to you this need. Don't take it personally. I was like, because that was my default. I was trying to do that. So I don't know if that helps anyone out there, but I was like, oh, that's a revelation for me.
And here's something that can
And it was freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the point. And that's how you grow in the communication. But here's the second technique or second tool. That even if I share a particular need or I address an issue and there's not an immediate change, or I don't get that need met immediately, I'm still going to love you. Mm-hmm. My love for you is not conditional upon you meeting this need. And in our culture, that's what it comes to. Well, he's not meeting my needs, or she's not meeting my needs, so I'm going to throw them away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're not valuable. I'm going to go look for someone or somewhere else to find that.
And we know
that is not. The grass is not greener on the other side. If they're saying that, they're lying.
So we've addressed an issue. What about being patient with the change process? I've addressed an issue or a need or sometimes, and maybe you can relate to this, a particular frustration. Maybe you're doing something that really drives me crazy or stresses me or I'm not used to or whatever, but I bring it to you. The importance of being patient.
Oh, so you're saying like I'm not supposed to immediately, like your requests, I'm not supposed to immediately react to?
Adjustments aren't always immediate, but we want them to be. And we don't understand, and we say, well, they didn't adjust. They didn't change immediately, so they don't love me. No, that's not the case.
So
Change doesn't come easy for anybody. So put yourself in that person's position for a while.
Yes, be empathetic.
Yeah.
So hard, so challenging, but be empathetic.
So be patient, be committed in your love to each other, be clear, and be honest. Issues don't get better over time. Communication makes you better together. And so that's something that we want to focus on. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We look forward to the next episode of
Better Together.
All right.